There's been sort of a stench of sleaze about him now for the last year or so.
Women have certain skills, don't they, that men don't?
Don't forget to subscribe to The Rest is Spain on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
Hi, and welcome to the Rest is Spain podcast by the Olive Press, brought to you by Staysure Expat. Bit of a different format today. I'm here with Jon over the internet. So hi, Jon.
Hi, good morning, Caroline. How are you going?
I'm good, thank you. We're missing Walt though. Where's Walt gone?
Where's Wally? Where's Walt? He's gone missing. He's gone off for a 2-week holiday up towards Catalonia. I think he's driving up and seeing people on route. So it's that sort of time of year, isn't it, when everyone sort of heads off. Any sensible expats in Spain, they're either going to Scotland or they're going to Galicia or somewhere cool if they've got any sense.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone except us, who's still here in blazing heat, but never mind.
Well,
a really exciting week this week for women's football. What are your thoughts, Jon?
yeah, hasn't it been remarkable? And unlike a lot of my fellow men, I've been really enjoying the tournament, or at least bits of it. And I think the football's been really fun to watch. I know England had a bit of a slow start, but in the end, I saw 2 extraordinary penalty shootouts that allowed us to win the Euros again. And it's something that, for the English, for England, why is it that our ladies our women can win the World Cup or the Euros, but our men seem to fail to do it? I can't understand that. Can you?
What can I say? I mean, obviously, women have certain skills, don't they, that men don't? That might be why. But yeah, I mean, some of the stars, Hannah Hampton, she was really good. So, it's created some real heroes now, national heroes for the UK.
Hannah Hampton in particular is brilliant for us in Spain because I don't know how many of our listeners know, but Hannah Hampton actually was an expatriate for 5 years. And
really? What, in Spain?
Yeah, she was living in Spain. Her parents are both teachers, and she moved to Valencia region when she was 5 years old. I think both her teachers had jobs in a private school up there. So she arrived, and even at the age of 5, apparently she was steeped in footballing skills. Apparently, someone in her school, one of the parents of one of the boys in her school who was Argentinian, said, "My God, your daughter's amazing. She needs to be playing up at Villarreal." So Villarreal, the side that actually managed to get into the Champions League last year from Spain, she was suddenly whisked off, and next thing she knew, she was playing football for the girls' team at Villarreal, the under 10s or whatever football team at Villarreal. And it's an incredible story. She literally didn't speak hardly a word of Spanish, but over the course of a year with extra Spanish tuition plus the school, she got up to speed. And so by the end of her 5-year stint where she played for Villarreal the whole time, she was completely bilingual. And when they interviewed her recently on Spanish TV and the Spanish press, they could not believe how brilliant her Spanish was. They were like, "Wow, is she actually?
Yeah.
She actually is?" Can we have her?
I see. Yeah, amazing, great. So she's kind of playing for both sides. Although obviously played for England the other day, but she probably, must have been interesting for her to play against Spain.
Yeah, it was very interesting, and she actually talked a bit about how she's not ruling out coming back to live in Spain, and she's actually saying she'd quite like to come to Barcelona. So I think she really misses Spain and really enjoyed it. And I think it was only because her parents one of them had another opportunity back in the Midlands, and she came back, and apparently, I think Keith will know this, I think she came back and immediately got a position at Stoke City. And then from there went to, I think, her beloved West Brom, and then from there to Aston Villa. So she's clearly, a good professional. I think she signed professional at 18, but always loved Spain. So I think, who wouldn't, in an ideal world, come back to Spain if they could?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I'm very much a fan of Spain. I would definitely come back to Spain if I could. Although, things are changing a little bit here. I think we have to touch on the news of what happened in Aldi last week or last Sunday. Has the mood changed a bit since the shooting at Aldi? What do you think?
It's interesting. I mean, am I correct in saying that that's your local supermarket?
It is, yeah. I mean, I could have been there. I go there nearly every other day. So, it shocked me, not going to lie, to see that actually, these kind of isolated incidents that we hear about, where normally innocent citizens aren't touched, somebody actually did get hurt. So, that was the shocker, I think.
Well, let me explain, because a few people here may not have read this or heard about this. And this was a shooting that took place in the car park of Aldi, a supermarket just on, well, most people know Aldi, but at the supermarket in Atalaya, just down the outskirts of Estepona, between Estepona and San Pedro. And it involved a guy, a totally innocent guy, who was with a 9-year-old boy in the car. And as he was loading up the car, someone came out, and there was a series of bullets, I think 27 in total, fired between two gangs. They're actually now known to be Turkish gangs, and there's this shootout, and I'd say it broad daylight, because it was actually sort of twilight, and it was just getting dark, because it was at the end of the day. And there's still a lot of people around because it's summer. And unfortunately, this guy in a car was shot in the shoulder, had to be rushed to hospital. I mean, and by amazing fortune, the child that was sitting just behind him didn't get shot, or no one else got shot. But it's clearly caused, as you say, a real panic amongst people who shop in the area. It brings it home that we are surrounded by a series, hundreds, in fact, of mafia gangs who are based on the Costa del Sol. So I do think, it's changed the dimensions a little bit, and there's no doubt the police here are really on top of who the gangs are. They know who these gangs are, but this to me were two relatively new gangs. I've not heard much from the Turkish gangs for a long time, and I think one of them was called the Daltons, and the other one was called the Caspers. I mean, they don't sound the Daltons. I mean, it doesn't sound very Turkish, does it?
No, it
But
doesn't sound very Turkish at all.
but they are the Daltons and the Caspers, and they, I think, are relatively new down here. In fact, I've never heard of them before, and it suggests to me that there's a new gang in town, or two new gangs in town. So I don't know how you
Okay.
feel about that.
Well, I don't feel great about it, obviously, but I'd like to know, with your contacts and with your insider information to the police, is there anything else that you can share with us, or is that it? Have you shared everything that you know?
Well, what I do know is that we work really closely with Greco, which is a part of UDICO. It's a national police department, and there's 4 of these departments in Spain, and understandably, one of them is here in Marbella. And now this is around 28 to 30 plainclothes policemen who work out of an office, a station that's completely unmarked. You would have no idea. You've probably driven past it 3 or 4 times. You'd have no idea it's a police station. And these guys mostly are sent. Well, in fact, I can tell you 2 of them are there permanently, and the rest of them are sent down at the beginning of the month from Barcelona, from Madrid, potentially Bilbao. They don't know what they're doing. They arrive here, and they're told, right, this week we're going to be studying this gang, this week we're going to be studying this crime, this week we're going to be investigating this group. And we've interviewed them a number of times. We were quite close contact with them, and they tell us that they know all the gangs down here. They know what they do, they know where they go for breakfast, they know the sports they get up to, they know where they go in the afternoon, the gyms they go to. And they actually, it's quite fun. I shouldn't laugh, but they actually work out with them in their same gyms.
Gym
I
buddies.
don't know if they play
Yeah.
paddle with them, but the most amazing thing was, for example, at the Royal Club in Puerto Banús, Royal Paddle Club, they actually they told me how they watched these gangs not only interact with each other and talk to each other at separate tables, but actually end up playing paddle together.
Yeah, well, that's another one you mentioned. Is the Royal Paddle is known for. Well, recently they've had a few incidents there, haven't they? So it's not, the only place,
Well,
Aldi, but it's just shocking, that it kind of hurts a civilian.
actually, the distance between Royal Tennis Club and Aldi, we're talking about, I'm going to say probably about a mile, or even less than that, probably a kilometre at most. And if you remember that case at the Royal Paddle, one of the gangsters had been in there working out, and he'd been putting up things on Instagram saying how great it was. Look at me, aren't I amazing on my cycle machine, my rippling muscles. And I think it was the second post he put up at around 12 o'clock. Clearly that wound up one of their rivals, who's like, right, where is
It was envy
And in
killing,
the
like,
background,
My
See
muscles aren't as
behind
big as
the
yours.
Royal Paddle in the background, and so they were like, "Oh, where is he? Oh, he's at the Royal Paddle Club." So when the guy
Amazing.
kind of came out,
Yeah.
had his shower and his coffee, he walked out into the street, and bang, bang, he was shot. In fact, rather
Goodness.
nastily shot twice in the balls and in the bum, I think. So apparently, which is deliberate, but they didn't want to kill him. They just wanted to give him a lesson. So that that is a gang on gang thing. Now the police will take that seriously, but they will investigate it. Of course they will. But he will. They know that if they find him in the hospital, when they find him in the hospital because he was arrested, taken to hospital, they know he won't say anything. Whereas
Mm.
this shooting in the Aldi car park has a different dimension because when a passerby, when an innocent person gets shot, particularly in summer when the whole world is going to report on it as they have, it makes Marbella look, it makes Marbella, it makes Andalusia, it makes Spain look like a dangerous place to come on holiday. Now, the statistics you've probably seen are
Totally.
down, aren't they? We're hearing that holiday makers are down some percentage. It's quieter in certain places. I keep reading about this in the UK press. This must have some dimension. I mean, do you think this is putting people off?
It'd be hard to say, to be honest, but yeah, and it's surely not going to be a selling point. There is a lot in the press, in the UK press, the tabloid press, about Spain and almost glorifying the violence a little bit, dramatizing it. I mean, I know we had the shooting a few weeks ago in Fuengirola. That was a big one as well, you know. So it's like, yeah, these things do obviously put people off. Absolutely.
But I mean,
Yeah.
I think I think it's fair to say that, for example, in Fuengirola, that was while it was shocking, and the British press, you're right, they went really big on it. They were two well-known Scottish gangsters, and
Hmm.
one might suggest, well, if you're going to dabble in crime, you've got to accept the knock-on effect of it, which is certainly if you dabble in violent crime, because we're talking about importing drugs. In this case, maybe it's even heroin. Then the consequences of that are pretty severe. So, I think people when they saw that headline, the two Scottish guys killed in Fuengirola, they quickly kind of moved on. But this case is
Yeah.
different because the police will now are really taking this very seriously. They're trying to get to the bottom of it. They will come down very heavily on these two Turkish gangs. They won't be able to operate here anymore. I absolutely guarantee that they'll make it very difficult for them to operate. This has
Mm.
happened. I'm certain there'll be arrests very soon, and I'm pretty sure that they'll be taking this very seriously. And I think the message to anyone who's thinking of coming on holiday here or is living here is that this is extremely rare to happen. And I think we have to go back to Olive Press. I think we reported on a shooting in Nueva Andalucía at the Point Bar, and that was around 2011 or 2010 that last remember so an innocent person being shot. If you remember that, that was an amazing incident. I don't know if you were here then. There was a whole
No,
series
just
of
before I
shootings,
arrived.
broad daylight shootings, and a kid and a hairdresser got shot, and a couple of other people got
Oh
shot.
God.
Yeah, that was bad. But this is bad, and I think I'm really happy to say that it's nearly 10 days, 9 days. So certainly it doesn't seem to have happened again.
No, touch wood.
So
Yeah. So Spain is a really great place to come and visit everybody. And just to reinforce that, I just want to talk about your headline news. What's this all about then? So this is all about corruption and Pedro Sanchez. So can you explain a little bit about this?
hopefully the headline boiling points works on lots of levels. One in particular because it's boiling hot here now. I think yesterday it touched nearly
Yeah.
40. I think we had an orange alert, and today it's looking like it's also up again. So
Yeah.
I think, but boiling point is also, I think, a good headline because we're talking about a series of saunas here, gay saunas and brothels in Madrid. And where it's so remarkable, and we don't put too much politics in the olive press because we know that maybe more online, but more in the printed paper, people on the costas aren't necessarily generally so interested in politics. But when you've got
Mm.
the prime minister there's been sort of a stench of sleaze about him now for the last year or so, and mostly we've kind of avoided it because it's felt a little bit kind of inconsequential, and a bit over political, and I think a lot of it seems to stem from a right wing trade union in particular. But this one is intriguing. And when the leader of the opposition brought up in an open session in the House of Commons here, the Cortes as they call it, when he brought up in a session that how much money did you make from brothels, dear Prime Minister, dear Pedro? It was one of those moments where you sort of drop your bacon sandwich and were like, "Oh my God, did he just say that?" I mean, the Prime Minister,
Yeah.
Minister looked like he covered his face and was like, "Oh my God, this is." So then it started unraveling to the extent that it emerges that the Prime Minister's wife's family, that's her uncle and her father and a group of them, a big family group, over a series of years ran at least 9 brothels and gay saunas around the Madrid area, and then going north out of Madrid. Now, the idea is this: that the Prime Minister's wife, who's been involved already in a couple of investigations, plus his brother, Prime Minister's wife ended up with 3 houses that may or may not have come from the proceeds of prostitution, which in itself shouldn't be it shouldn't necessarily be the fault of the Prime Minister or the President. But the thing is, if he's enjoying and living in those houses, then he's better benefiting from prostitution. Now, if it's legal prostitution, most prostitution in Spain is legal, as are gay saunas. However, in one of these brothels, there were a series of men from Romania who went to prison for imprisoning prostitutes effectively in the brothel, taking their passports. The manager was sent down for 7 years. Now, that suggests that's an illegal brothel, and therefore Pedro Sanchez really has a lot to answer here, and I think he has to come out and explain this. And it's it's anything. It's really not it's not healthy for him at all. And I do think that it's in fact El País even say that the readers say they're concerned that the majority actually say that they think it's time for him to go. A former prime minister here, Felipe González, who was the leader for the socialists for 14 years here, he said, look, he hasn't got a mandate anymore. He feels like there's too much around him. He should now step down. And so the reason we put it on our front page was simple, Caroline, is that we're trying to feel the mood of the nation. And while I think he's quite an urbane, intelligent guy, I don't think he did benefited from the prostitution at all, or any of this scandal. But I think that it really, it may be time for someone else to come and lead the country. Maybe it's time for elections.
Now, we're going to take a quick break from talking about the news to hear from our sponsor.
Sorry, no hablo español?
Looking for travel insurance you can understand? Staysure have been the experts in travel insurance for over 50s with pre-existing medical conditions for over 20 years. Get a quote today at staysure.com or call us free on +34 900 861 023 for a policy in plain English.
Staysure Expat is a tied agent of Ergo Seguros de Viaje.
What is it with politicians and scandal? I mean, you must have seen a few in your time, John. So, why do you think people are just always looking for scandal with politicians?
It's a very good question. One of the glimmers of hope for Pedro is that since this scandal broke about 10 days or 12 days ago, our listeners or readers may not know that there's another scandal broke around a former minister called Montoro. And Montoro was the finance minister. And incredibly, he supposedly, along with 3 other members of Hacienda, or the tax authorities, supposedly siphoned away 2.2 billion. And that was just in 1 year, apparently. And this was money that was a kind of kickback or under the table kickback to 5 or 6 huge gas companies. We're talking like the big ones, Repsol and the Cepsas, the big petrol stations you see on the high street. They changed the law to suit them, and in return got handed a whole stack of money. And he's from the PP. So of course Pedro Sanchez was delighted because this is the other side of the table. And I'm afraid to say, and I agree, that it's just inevitable, isn't it, that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, as they say. And it's the same in England, the same in Germany, the same in France, the same in obviously parts of Africa and Asia are worse. But Spain is one of the top of the league table, I'm afraid, in Europe. it's up there with Italy. I don't think we've reported now nearly 20 years on corruption here. I've seen some horrific scandals, and I'd love to go into it in more detail, but I could sit here for 20 minutes, half an hour talking just about corruption
Yeah,
scandals, and you know, maybe that's a
exactly.
possible future episode, because if there's an appetite for it, because you know the Gürtel
Yeah,
scandal, which tainted the PP party around 5 or 6 years ago. You've got the ERE scandal in Andalusia, which was also €1 billion siphoned off by politicians in Seville. You know, the list goes on. There's so many. In fact, we are listing the top 5 scandals in our newspaper this week. We're following this up. We're continuing with this
great.
theme. So we perhaps can touch on it in our next pod. But
Yeah.
you know, it's definitely not going away. And I mean, what's your view? Why do you think politicians are so inevitably end up taking money in backhanders?
I think that there's an innate, in most humans, there's, people do things wrong. Okay. People do things that they wouldn't want everyone to know about. And that just happens. People do things, people have affairs, people do all sorts of things. But when someone is in a public figure like a politician or, that kind of thing, that's what people go for, and they look for that. But it does seem to be that it's quite a high percentage of politicians, especially in Spain, that do these things, that have these scandals. So I don't know, really.
So you think
It's a
it's
very
natural?
interesting
Do you
one.
think it's like a natural thing that politicians are no different to other professions? You mean that you're saying, well, just like the number percentage of people have affairs or get involved in?
Well, if you start looking at, what happened the other week with the Coldplay incident and, the couple that were caught out on the kiss cam. I mean, obviously, they've gone for them because he was a very important person in his company. He was the CEO. So, that would be the same reaction if he was a politician, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I don't think it's just politicians that have these scandals and that are corrupt. But I do think that naturally, to become a politician, you've got to be quite interested in power. You've got to be interested in, pushing yourself forward. Maybe there's more of a tendency to narcissism. I don't know. But it's kind of like, I can see how it goes with the territory, but I'm not saying that all politicians are corrupt at all. Talking of politics, now I've got you here, Jon. I really want to know, well, about one of the biggest politicians in the world today, one of the most public figures ever, Trump. What's going on? What's all this with the Epstein files? Tell us more.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. I mean, what a strange character Donald Trump is, right? I mean, you've been following around Scotland as he goes to his new golf course and having his flunkies dropping balls into preferential lies so he can chip on the green, and he's just a cheat, isn't he? He's an incorrigible man who, as a businessman, he was a scoundrel, and as a politician, he's downright dodgy as hell. I mean, to be a little bit careful what we say, but he's definitely a narcissist. Is he a sociopath? Is he potentially a psychopath? In terms of Epstein, though, there really is, like, it's a remarkable story, and it's not going away. This so-called Epstein files, and while it doesn't link directly to Spain, it does link quite closely to me. And as the editor of the Olive Press, back in the day when I was working at the Mail on Sunday, I did 3 separate trips to America to investigate the relationship between Jeffrey Epstein and his then on-off girlfriend Ghislaine Maxwell, and our own Prince Andrew and his wife Fergie, and they were regularly travelling over to America and spending a lot. In fact, Epstein, as we now know, was also at Windsor Castle, wasn't he? Because he was pictured in the grounds of Windsor Castle. So they were regularly travelling together. They were getting on like a house on fire. And I had very good contacts in the royal family, particularly Fergie. And I knew when they were travelling what they were up to. And then we found out that when they were in America, they were going backwards and forwards to his ranch in Texas, and they were also going, intriguingly, to gay clubs in Miami. So we started investigating this and travelling around America and looking into it a bit more, and finding out what was happening. And for one article, we discovered that Prince Andrew was dating on the side from Fergie, was having a relationship, an affair with a vibrator salesman, a used vibrator salesman, believe it or not, from Pensacola.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay. Now that's very strange.
that was a
Okay.
random one. She was happily talking about it, opened up. I mean, and the royal family never discussed; they denied it entirely. But then I went back to New York and I started digging into Epstein's house, his brownstone in New York, which is an incredible property, in a really good location in Manhattan. And I started hearing about these incredible parties from people who lived in the road. Said, a lot of very young girls going in, lots of models, teenagers going in. These parties going on into the night, very lurid. People hearing sort of that things that shouldn't be going on were going on in there. This is going back to 2000, right? So this is really early. This is 24 years ago. And so I sort of eventually met a porter who was 2 doors down of a house, because these are like 5-6 story houses. So they're multi-millionaires, and they'd have drivers and porters and housekeepers. And this guy started telling me about how the guests included Donald Trump. And I was like, at the time I'd heard of him because of Trump Towers and hotels. But I was like, so
Yeah.
really? Is he? He goes, yeah, Donald Trump's here a lot. He comes in a lot. He's a regular, and he's often got models in his arms. And there's no doubt that he's as thick as thieves with Epstein. So in this 2-page article I did for the Mail on Sunday in April in 2000, somewhere about 3/4 of the way through the article, we mentioned we mentioned how Trump was a regular. That article was published, and I thought that was the end of it. Anyway, 2000, queued forward to 2015, I get a call from the New York Times saying, Trump's running for power. We're deeply worried about this man leading our country. We hear all these rumors about him. Can you help us? Can you put us in touch with this porter, this
Interesting.
guy? And I was like, well, yeah, of course, I'd love to. The only problem is that my notepads are left at the Mail on Sunday. When I left Mail on Sunday to come to Spain, I obviously hand in your notepads, and you have to keep them for 4 or 5 years legally. Often they keep them for longer. Anyway, I got in touch with the features department, and my former features editor had gone. They couldn't find the notepads, and therefore I couldn't find the name of the guy or his phone number. I mean, he didn't want to go on the record for obvious reasons, right? He clearly didn't want to be named in the article, but they were like, they went to look for him, and they couldn't find him. But as you know now, it's all starting to come out, and it's absolutely certain. I just saw him quoted yesterday saying, I wasn't on the island, but he says, I kind of knew Epstein, yes, but I know certain people on the island, like Bill Clinton was there for 28 different occasions. So he knows a lot of detail about this case. How does he know that? They were incredibly close. The videos show them at parties, sort of, eyeing up teenage girls as if they were teenagers themselves, but they're clearly in their 40s, or late 30s. You've probably seen some of these videos. There's another video of Trump it's all out there. And to me, it's absolutely strikes me as so hypocritical to have someone leading and moralizing on the world, but being so linked to one of the worst predatory paedophiles in global history. I mean, apparently mafia gangs were bringing girls through from Mexico to Florida, to Palm Beach, where he was, he got a small slap on the wrist. He was bringing hundreds of girls in. I don't know if anyone's seen the documentaries, but
Yeah. Yeah. Well, absolutely. We'll see how this all unfolds. Um, so yeah, very interesting. And will the Olive Press be doing any more investigation on this issue, or more sticking to Spain? Wow. Mm.
You're starting to delve into the realms of dangerous reporting when you start looking into the royals,
Yeah,
you start looking
sure.
into people like Epstein.
Sure.
He's a very, very dangerous figure. So, yeah, I mean, we will continue. I think my view is that it's not that relevant to Spain, so we're not going to invest a lot of time into it, but
Oh,
worth
well, I'll certainly be looking forward
discussing.
to. Yeah, I'll certainly be looking forward to seeing your 5 top scandals in Spain article. That sounds great. So when does the next paper come out?
So it should be out on Wednesday this week and on
Okay, looking
Thursday
forward to
in
that.
the Costa Blanca.
Okay, yeah, looking forward to that. Okay, well, thanks, John. That's been really informative as usual. Yeah, so thanks a lot, and I'll see you next time.
Yeah, it's been great. I think we've covered some great subjects. Thanks for
Yeah,
that,
definitely.
Caroline. See you soon.
Bye.